Today in Canberra, Labor was patting itself on the back to mark the 15th anniversary of Kevin Rudd's parliamentary apology to Aboriginal people, the stolen generation. I was there in the House of Reps on the day that he delivered the apology, and while it was a significant and symbolic occasion, it was never a turning point in the actual well-being of Aboriginal people who, on average, still leave school earlier, are much less likely to ever have a job, and still die younger than other Australians. It seems the more we talk about how hard done by Aboriginal people have been and how unfair our society is and how many special measures there needs to be for some of us but not all of us, the more things remain the same or even get worse, as we're seeing in Alice Springs, Ceduna and elsewhere where grog bans have been lifted and the cashless debit card has been abolished. Naturally, Labor used the milestone of the apology to spruik today for their voice, in particular piling on the moral pressure to Peter Dutton, with the Indigenous Affairs Minister Linda Burney urging him, don't make the same mistake twice, they said on The Voice, that he did when he boycotted the original apology 15 years back.
I know that some people who boycotted the historic day in 2008 have since expressed their regret. To do anything else would be to repeat the mistakes of the past.
Now, in fact, there's no real parallel between the apology and The Voice. One was merely an important piece of symbolism. The other would be a massive change to the way we're governed, masquerading as just a small measure of recognition. But it's worth remembering the main speeches on this day 15 years back. Kevin Rudd did say that the great symbolism of reconciliation had to be accompanied by even greater substance. And Rudd did propose a joint policy commission to be co-led by the PM and the then Leader of the Opposition to fix remote housing. And he did acknowledge that there had to be absolute bipartisanship on any recognition referendum lest it fail. Well, we all know what happened, don't we? Remote housing was not fixed, Aboriginal outcomes are not markedly improved, and there's not a skerrick of genuine bipartisanship for Labor on The Voice, although there's light years between Rudd's idea of mentioning Aboriginal Australians in the Constitution and what's now on the table with The Voice. If the apology had really been about substance rather than symbolism, there would not have been the need for another $400 million today announced in new spending in order to get clean water, amongst other things, to remote communities. And that's on top of the $30 billion a year that the Productivity Commission estimates is spent annually on Aboriginal programs. By contrast, the man I was working for at the time, Opposition Leader Dr. Brendan Nelson, well, he dwelt on present failures as much as past ones.
Today our nation pauses to reflect on this chapter of relations between Aboriginal and non-Aboriginal Australia. In doing so, however, given that there are so many Australians who perhaps unusually today are focused on Aboriginal issues, spare a thought for the real, immediate, seemingly intractable and disgraceful circumstances in which many Indigenous Australians find themselves today. As we meet and speak in this Parliament, Aboriginal Australians continue to die long before the rest of us. Alcohol, welfare without responsibilities, isolation from the economic mainstream, corrupt management of resources, nepotism, political buck passing between governments with divided responsibilities, lack of home ownership, under-policing, and tolerance by authorities of neglect and abuse of children that violates all for which we stand, all combine to see too many Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people living lives of existential aimlessness.
Well, you judge which speech has best stood the test of time. And that's the trouble with The Voice. It wouldn't just reinforce the separatism that's at the heart of the gulf between remote Indigenous lives and the lives the rest of us enjoy. If we're ever to be one people, there simply can't be a separatist voice based on race cemented forever in our Constitution.